Marcus stood at the edge of the marina, his eyes tracing the gentle waves as they brushed against the dock. The salty air carried a sense of freedom, the kind of freedom he had long dreamed of. Today was not just any day. It was a day that marked years of dedication, sacrifice, and persistence. For the first time in his life, he had rented a yacht. It wasn't about showing off or making others jealous, it was about giving his family a memory that they would cherish forever. He glanced over his shoulder and saw his children racing one another along the wooden planks of the pier. Their laughter filled the air, louder than the seagulls crying overhead. His wife, Leah, held a basket of homemade food, her smile calm and reassuring. She had stood by him in every storm, through late nights and early mornings, through times when money was short, and dreams seemed far away. Now, as she adjusted the basket and called for the children to slow down, Marcus felt an overwhelming wave of gratitude. He remembered the years when life had been nothing but a struggle. There had been months when bills piled up, and the refrigerator was nearly empty. He had worked 2 jobs just to keep a roof over their heads. Many people had doubted him, telling him that his dreams of starting his own business would never come true. But Marcus had refused to let their words define him. He pushed forward, building step by step until his small company finally found success. Renting this yacht wasn't just a luxury, it was a symbol of everything he had fought for. The yacht itself was gleaming in the morning sun, its polished surface reflecting light like a mirror. Marcus ran his hand along its side, feeling the smoothness under his palm. He could already imagine the sound of the engine humming, the water parting as they sailed into the open sea. His children would feel the wind rush through their hair, and Leah would sit back, finally able to relax, knowing that their sacrifices had led them here. This was a new chapter in their lives, and Marcus wanted it to begin with joy. As the family carried their belongings on board, neighbors and strangers nearby watched with curiosity. Some smiled warmly, perhaps happy to see a family enjoying life. Others, however, looked on with expressions that were harder to read. Marcus noticed the stares but chose not to let them bother him. He had learned long ago that people would always have opinions, and not all of them would be kind. What mattered was the happiness of his family. The children rushed to explore the yacht, peeking into every corner and marveling at the seats, the little kitchen, and the wide deck. Leah carefully arranged the food on the table, making sure everything was in place before they set off. Marcus checked the rental documents again, neatly folded in his bag, just to be certain everything was in order. He had always been a man who liked to be prepared. He wanted no mistakes today, no interruptions that could spoil the day they had waited so long for. The sun climbed higher, warming the surface of the water, and Marcus felt a thrill as he started preparing the yacht for departure. He checked the ropes, glanced at the controls, and listened as the engine came alive with a low rumble. His heart pounded with excitement. For a man who had once wondered if he would ever escape the cycle of struggle, the sound was like music. It was proof that perseverance had meaning. Leah joined him at the steering wheel, gently resting her hand on his shoulder. "You've done it," she said softly. Her eyes glowed with pride. Marcus didn't need long speeches or grand gestures, those few words were enough to remind him why he had never given up. This wasn't only about him. It was about giving his family a life where dreams didn't feel impossible. For a brief moment, he allowed himself to close his eyes and simply listen. He heard his children's giggles echoing across the deck, Leah's calm voice as she reminded them to be careful, and the soothing rhythm of waves lapping against the yacht. It was the sound of peace, the sound of happiness earned. Marcus adjusted his cap and looked ahead at the horizon. The sea stretched endlessly, like an open path waiting to be explored. He thought of how far he had come from his younger days, when doubt and fear had weighed heavily on him. He thought of the times when people had turned him away, not believing in his potential, and the times when his family had leaned on him even when he had nothing to give but hope. Now, as he stood ready to guide the yacht into the open waters, he knew all those moments had led to this. He waved to a passerby on the dock, who nodded in return, and then turned back to his family. "Ready to go?" he asked with a grin. The children cheered, jumping with excitement, and Leah simply nodded with a smile that said more than words ever could. With steady hands, Marcus began to steer the yacht away from the dock. The ropes loosened, the engine hummed stronger, and the vessel slowly drifted forward. A sense of freedom surged through him. The marina was fading behind them, and ahead lay the wide blue expanse of the sea. His children clapped their hands, and Leah reached for his hand, squeezing it tightly as if to share in the moment. For Marcus, this was not just a trip. It was a celebration of love, endurance, and victory over every obstacle life had thrown his way. He had turned doubt into determination, hardship into hope, and now he was turning dreams into reality. In that moment, with the sun shining above and the sea welcoming them, nothing else mattered. He was exactly where he was meant to be. Marcus felt alive as the yacht glided forward, cutting through the gentle waves. The children leaned over the side, squealing with joy at the sight of the water splashing up in tiny sprays. Leah sat comfortably on one of the cushioned seats, holding her phone up to capture the moment, smiling as the sunlight touched her face. For Marcus, everything seemed perfect. He had finally given his family a memory that would last forever. As they moved away from the dock, Marcus imagined how the rest of the day would unfold. They would sail farther out, drop anchor, eat the food Leah had lovingly prepared, and laugh together under the open sky. He pictured his kids splashing in the shallow water and Leah resting peacefully with the sound of the sea around her. Every detail of this day had been carefully planned. Nothing, he thought, could go wrong. But as Marcus focused on the waters ahead, movement on the dock caught his eye. Two uniformed police officers were striding quickly toward the pier where the yacht had been tied. At first, he thought nothing of it. Maybe they were on routine duty, checking the marina as they always did. But then he noticed the way their eyes locked onto him, sharp and filled with suspicion. They weren't just patrolling. They were coming directly toward him. Marcus frowned slightly but didn't let his worry show. Leah noticed his gaze and turned to look. Her expression shifted from calm to uneasy as she, too, saw the officers waving their arms and shouting something he couldn't hear over the sound of the engine. "Why are they calling us?" Leah asked softly, clutching the edge of her seat. Marcus tried to keep his tone steady. "I'm not sure. Maybe they just want to check something." He slowed the yacht and carefully steered it back toward the dock, not wanting to cause any trouble. By now, the children had noticed the officers as well. Their laughter faded into quiet murmurs, their small faces filled with confusion. The yacht bumped gently against the side of the pier again as Marcus cut the engine. The two officers stepped forward quickly, their shoes pounding against the wooden planks. Their expressions were stern, their movements brisk. "Sir," one of them barked, "step away from the wheel." Marcus blinked, confused. "Excuse me? Is there a problem?" he asked, keeping his voice calm. "This yacht," the other officer said firmly, "was reported stolen. We need you to step off immediately." Marcus felt his stomach tighten. Stolen? That couldn't be true. He had the rental papers neatly folded in his bag. He had signed the agreement himself. "There must be some mistake," he said, his voice steady but firm. "I rented this yacht legally. The documents are right here with me." He reached toward his bag. But the officers didn't give him the chance. One of them stepped closer, holding out a hand as if to stop him. "Step away from the bag. We'll handle this." Leah stood up now, her voice trembling. "Please, there's no mistake. My husband rented this yacht for the day. We have all the papers. If you'll just let him show you." But the officer cut her off sharply. "Ma'am, stay back. We'll take care of this." The children, sensing their mother's fear, began to cling to her arms, their wide eyes darting between the officers and their father. Marcus kept his composure, though his heart pounded in his chest. He had dealt with difficult situations before. He believed that if he stayed calm and explained, everything would clear up. "Officers," Marcus said slowly, carefully choosing his words, "I promise you, I did not steal this yacht. The rental contract and the receipt are in my bag, right there. If you'd just let me get them, this will all be cleared up in a second." But the officers exchanged a look that told Marcus they had already made up their minds. One of them reached for his handcuffs. "Step down now," he ordered. "You're coming with us." Leah gasped, shaking her head in disbelief. "No, no, you don't understand. He hasn't done anything wrong. Please, listen to us." The children's voices rose in panic. "Daddy? What's happening? Why are they saying that?" Marcus swallowed hard, forcing himself to remain calm even as the officers moved closer. He didn't want his children to see him lose control. He didn't want Leah to think he was afraid. But inside, he felt a storm raging. How could they not even check the documents? How could they look at him and assume the worst? The officers grabbed his arms firmly, and Marcus instinctively tried to speak again. "Please, just check my bag. The proof is there. I rented this yacht properly. This is a mistake." But his words seemed to fall on deaf ears. The officers pulled his arms behind his back and snapped the handcuffs on, the cold metal pressing against his wrists. Leah cried out, rushing forward, but one of the officers held out a hand, warning her to stay back. The children's cries grew louder, echoing painfully in Marcus's ears. A crowd had started to form along the pier. People walking by had stopped, drawn by the sight of the officers and the handcuffed man standing on the yacht. Some whispered to one another, their faces filled with uncertainty. A few took out their phones, recording the scene silently. Marcus felt their stares, heavy and unkind, and he knew what they were thinking. They weren't seeing a man who had worked hard to give his family a joyful day. They were seeing only what they wanted to see. Leah tried once more, her voice cracking as tears streamed down her cheeks. "Please, please, just check the papers. He's telling the truth. Why won't you listen?" But the officers ignored her pleas. One of them pulled Marcus firmly toward the edge of the yacht, ready to lead him onto the dock. His children cried even harder now, their little hands reaching out helplessly toward their father. Marcus turned his head slightly, forcing a small, steady smile for them, though inside his heart ached. "It's okay," he told them softly. "Don't be afraid. Everything will be fine." But deep inside, Marcus was not sure. He had done everything right, yet here he was, standing in handcuffs, treated as if he were guilty before anyone even bothered to look at the truth. He could feel his dignity being stripped away in front of strangers, his family, and his own children. The dock was alive with murmurs now, the voices of curious onlookers mixing with the cries of his children. The officers stood firm, refusing to let Marcus explain, refusing to consider his documents. The weight of the handcuffs pressed heavily on his wrists, but the weight in his heart was far greater. In that moment, as the morning sun continued to shine down, the perfect day Marcus had imagined seemed to crumble before his eyes. Yet even in the middle of humiliation and confusion, a part of him clung to hope. He knew he had done nothing wrong. He knew the truth was on his side. And somehow, he believed that truth would have to come out, no matter how long it took. The world seemed to stand still as Marcus stood in handcuffs, the voices of his children echoing in the background. The officers kept a firm hold on him, their expressions stiff and unyielding. Leah's pleas carried across the dock, but they landed on ears that refused to listen. Marcus felt the humiliation burn inside him, sharper than the tightness of the metal around his wrists. He tried once more to reason with them. "Please, officers, the papers are in my bag. One glance is all it takes. His voice was steady, calm, but inside, frustration grew like a fire. The taller officer shook his head as if Marcus's words meant nothing. Sir, we've already told you, this vessel was reported stolen. You can explain yourself downtown. Marcus looked at Leah, her tear-streaked face filled with disbelief. His children clung to her legs, their little bodies shaking with fear. He wanted to reach out to them, to hold them, to promise everything would be all right, but the cuffs reminded him that he was powerless for now. The onlookers whispered louder. Some frowned, some tilted their phones higher to record more clearly. A few shook their heads as if they knew deep down something wasn't right, but still, nobody stepped forward to intervene. It was as if the whole marina had become a stage, and Marcus had been cast unwillingly into the role of the accused. The younger officer tugged at Marcus's arm, urging him toward the dock. Leah cried out, "Wait. You're making a mistake. Please, just look at his bag. Why won't you even check?" The officer snapped back, "Ma'am, calm down. We're doing our job." Marcus clenched his jaw, forcing himself not to argue further. He had learned in life that sometimes silence was wiser than words, especially when those in authority refused to listen. Yet, every second of silence felt like another piece of his dignity slipping away. Suddenly, a strange sound filled the air. At first faint, it grew louder, rising above the noise of the crowd and the restless waves. The steady thump of blades slicing through the sky sent heads turning upward. People shaded their eyes with their hands, squinting against the sun. A helicopter was approaching. The officers paused for a moment, their grip on Marcus tightening instinctively as if expecting trouble. The crowd stirred, murmurs rippling through them like a wave. Children pointed, adults craned their necks, and Leah's eyes widened with confusion. Marcus tilted his head back, watching the helicopter draw closer. Its blades created powerful gusts of wind, sending loose papers flying across the dock and ruffling clothes and hair. The sound grew deafening as it hovered above the marina, the shadow of its frame passing over the yacht, over the officers, and over Marcus himself. "What on earth?" the younger officer muttered, his eyes fixed on the sky. The helicopter slowed, hovering with deliberate precision, its presence commanding attention. And then, to the astonishment of everyone, a rope ladder dropped down from its side, swinging slightly in the wind. Gasps escaped from the crowd. Phones rose higher to capture the unbelievable scene. Leah held her children tighter, their eyes wide with both fear and awe. Marcus's heart pounded, not with fear but with a strange sense of hope. Something was about to change. Two men in uniforms different from the police began descending the rope ladder with practiced ease. Their movements were sharp and confident, their expressions calm but serious. They wore jackets with the logo of the yacht rental company clearly marked on the front. The taller police officer stiffened, his eyes narrowing. "What is this?" he muttered under his breath, though his grip on Marcus remained firm. The two men landed smoothly on the dock, stepping forward with authority. The crowd shifted to give them space, curiosity buzzing through the air. One of the men held a folder in his hand, the papers inside clamped tightly against the wind from the helicopter's blades. "Officers," the man said in a steady voice, "we are representatives of Oceanic Rentals. That yacht is not stolen. It was rented legally this morning by Mr. Marcus Williams." The words rang out clear and loud, cutting through the noise of the helicopter and the restless murmurs of the crowd. For the first time since this nightmare began, Marcus felt a flicker of relief. Someone was finally speaking the truth. Leah gasped, pressing a hand to her mouth, her eyes filling with fresh tears not of fear, but of relief. The children's sobs slowed, their gazes fixed on the men who had appeared like rescuers from the sky. The officers exchanged uneasy glances. The younger one cleared his throat. "We received a report," the representative cut him off politely but firmly. "The report was false. We have the paperwork right here." Mr. Williams signed it himself this morning, and we've been tracking the yacht since it left the dock. Everything is perfectly in order. He opened the folder and pulled out the rental agreement, holding it out toward the officers. The taller officer hesitated, his sternness faltering as he glanced at the document. The younger one shifted uncomfortably, clearly unsure of what to do. The crowd grew louder now, their whispers turning into pointed comments. Phones kept recording. Every second was being documented. Marcus stood silently, watching them, the cuffs still biting into his wrists. A mixture of anger and relief coursed through him. Finally, the truth was being forced into the open, undeniable, and clear. The second representative stepped forward, his voice firm. You've humiliated this man in front of his family and half the marina. He did nothing wrong. You owe him an apology, and you need to release him immediately. The taller officer's jaw tightened. His pride battled against the undeniable evidence before him. Slowly, almost reluctantly, he reached for the cuffs. The clicking sound of the handcuffs unlocking was like music to Marcus's ears. His wrists were free again, though the faint red marks remained. He rubbed them gently, drawing in a deep breath of relief. Leah rushed forward, throwing her arms around him tightly. The children followed, wrapping themselves around his legs, their cries softening into quiet whimpers. Marcus leaned down slightly, whispering soothing words into their ears. It's okay now. Daddy's fine. Everything's going to be all right. The crowd, sensing the shift in the scene, erupted in murmurs of approval. Some clapped softly, others shook their heads in disapproval at the officers. Cameras and phones stayed raised, ensuring that what had just happened would not be forgotten. The helicopter hovered a moment longer before beginning to drift away, its job done. The representatives stayed behind, ensuring Marcus and his family were treated with respect before finally returning to the dock office. Marcus straightened, holding Leah's hand tightly, his children still clinging to him. He looked at the officers, who avoided his eyes. They had no words, no apology that could undo what had just happened. But Marcus didn't waste his energy on their silence. He knew the truth was out. That was enough. As the crowd slowly dispersed, Marcus led his family back onto the yacht. His hands still trembled slightly, but his heart was stronger now. He had endured humiliation, fear, and injustice, but he had also witnessed the power of truth shining through at the right moment. He turned to Leah, her eyes still wet with tears. We'll still go out there, he said softly, nodding toward the open waters. We're not going to let this ruin our day. She nodded, squeezing his hand tighter. Yes. We'll go together. The children, though shaken, managed small smiles. The yacht engine hummed back to life, and slowly, the family began to drift away once more, leaving behind the dock, the crowd, and the memory of what had happened. Ahead of them lay the endless sea, a promise of freedom and peace that no false accusation could ever take away. The marina still buzzed with the energy of what had just unfolded. Even as the helicopter drifted away into the distance, the sound of its blades echoed faintly in everyone's ears. Marcus stood at the wheel of the yacht again, but this time his hands trembled, not from excitement like before, but from the weight of everything that had just happened. The cuffs were gone, yet the marks they had left on his wrists were red reminders of how quickly joy had been turned into humiliation. Leah sat beside him, still holding his arm as if she was afraid to let go. Her face carried both relief and exhaustion, the kind that came from crying too much in a short span of time. The children huddled near their mother, quieter now, but their eyes still wide from the shock of seeing their father treated like a criminal. They didn't fully understand what had happened, but they had felt the fear deeply. The yacht's engine hummed steadily as Marcus guided it once more into the open waters. For a long while, no one spoke. The only sounds were the rush of waves against the hull and the soft cries of seagulls flying above. The family was together, safe, but silence filled the space where laughter should have been. Marcus looked at his reflection in the glass of the wheel. He saw not only his own face, but the worry etched into it. He had promised himself that this trip would be nothing but joy. He wanted his children to remember it as a day of happiness, a celebration of their family's journey. But now, the memory had been tainted by fear and shame. He clenched the wheel tighter, refusing to let the day end this way. He turned to Leah, who looked up at him with tired eyes. "We can still make this day ours," he said softly. "We came out here to celebrate. Let's not let them take that away from us." Leah blinked back tears and nodded slowly. "You're right. We can't let them win by leaving us broken." The children listened closely, their small faces searching for reassurance. Marcus knelt beside them, brushing their hair gently with his hands. "Listen to me," he said, his voice steady and calm. "What happened back there was wrong. Daddy didn't do anything bad. Sometimes people make mistakes, even the ones who are supposed to protect us. But the truth came out, didn't it?" The children nodded hesitantly. "And the truth will always come out," Marcus continued. "That's why we can keep our heads high. We know who we are. We don't let lies define us." His words sank into their hearts, and slowly, the fear in their eyes softened. Leah smiled faintly at him, her pride in him shining through the sadness. As the yacht glided farther from the dock, the sea stretched wide before them. The horizon was endless, the waves sparkling under the afternoon sun. Marcus turned the wheel gently, steering toward a quiet spot where the water was calm and inviting. Leah began unpacking the basket of food, arranging sandwiches, fruit, and cold drinks on the table. The children finally began to smile again as they helped, their laughter slowly returning in small bursts. The family sat together on the deck, eating and talking softly, letting the fresh breeze wash away the heaviness of the morning. Marcus listened to his children's voices, their innocent questions, and felt strength rising inside him again. They were resilient, and so was he. This day could still be a celebration not of wealth or luxury, but of love and endurance. As they ate, the yacht company's representatives approached in a smaller boat. They had stayed behind after the helicopter departed, determined to check in on Marcus and his family personally. The boat pulled up alongside the yacht, and one of the men called out, "Mr. Williams, may we come aboard?" Marcus nodded, though he braced himself for more reminders of the incident. The two men climbed aboard respectfully, their expressions sincere. One of them extended his hand. "Mr. Williams, we want to apologize again. What happened to you was unacceptable. The police acted without evidence, and we're glad we were able to arrive in time to clear your name." Marcus shook his hand firmly. "Thank you for stepping in. If you hadn't, I don't know how long they would have ignored the truth." The man nodded gravely. "We'll be filing a formal report about the incident. And please know, we'll also extend your rental for as long as you'd like, at no charge. It's the least we can do." Leah looked at them with gratitude, but Marcus simply said, "I appreciate it. What matters most is that my family is safe, and that the truth is out." The men excused themselves after ensuring everything was in order, and their boat drifted away, leaving Marcus and his family alone once more. The children began to grow excited again, asking if they could sit near the edge of the yacht to dip their feet in the water. Marcus agreed, watching them closely as they laughed and kicked at the waves. Leah leaned against him, her hand resting in his. "This is what I wanted for us," Marcus whispered. "Moments like this. A reminder that no matter what happens, we still have each other." Leah's eyes softened. "And that's more powerful than anything else." The sun began its slow descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. The family sat together, watching the colors reflect on the water. Marcus felt a sense of calm wash over him. He had been humiliated, yes, but he had also stood tall in the face of it. He had protected his children's sense of safety, and he had reminded Leah and himself that their strength was unshakable. The crowd's whispers, the officer's cold stares, and the sting of the handcuffs would remain in his memory, but they would not define him. What would define him was this: his family's laughter as the sea breeze danced around them, the warmth of Leah's hand in his, and the unbreakable truth that love always overpowered hate. As night approached, the yacht floated peacefully, the stars beginning to appear one by one. Marcus looked up at the sky, then back at his family. He knew they would always remember what had happened today, but he also knew that they would remember how they rose above it. He whispered quietly to himself, words meant for his own heart as much as for the vast sea: no false judgment, no unfair act, can ever steal who we are. The yacht rocked gently, carrying them farther away from the dock, farther away from the pain of the morning, and deeper into the embrace of the ocean. For Marcus, the day had not been ruined, it had been reshaped into something even stronger. A test of resilience. A lesson in courage. A reminder that the truth, no matter how delayed, always has a way of shining through. The stars shone brightly above as the yacht glided peacefully across the water. The waves shimmered with silver light, and the cool evening breeze carried with it a sense of calm that the family desperately needed after the day's chaos. Marcus leaned back in his seat, his children nestled beside him, their earlier fear replaced now with quiet yawns and sleepy smiles. Leah sat across from him, her face illuminated by the moonlight, her expression soft but thoughtful. The long day had stretched their emotions in every direction. What had begun as a celebration had nearly turned into a nightmare. Yet, here they were, together, safe, and finally at peace. Marcus knew this was the part of the day that would matter most: how they chose to end it, how they chose to remember it. He rose from his seat and walked to the edge of the yacht, staring out at the endless horizon. The salty breeze brushed his face, and he let it wash away the bitterness left inside him. He thought about the humiliation of the handcuffs, the pain in his children's eyes, and the stubbornness of the officers who had refused to see the truth. But he also thought about the helicopter descending from the sky, the representatives who had defended him, and the relief of finally being free again. Life had shown him both cruelty and kindness in a single afternoon, and he knew which side he wanted to hold onto. Leah joined him at the edge, sliding her hand into his. "Are you all right?" she asked gently. Marcus nodded slowly. "I am now. I just keep thinking about how close we came to losing this day. And I can't stop wondering how many others go through something like this and don't have someone to step in for them." Her fingers tightened around his. "What matters is that you kept calm. You didn't let anger control you. You showed the children what strength really looks like." Marcus looked at her, her eyes glowing with sincerity, and felt a wave of gratitude. She was right. His children had witnessed something painful, but they had also seen their father remain steady, dignified, and patient. That was the example he wanted to leave them with. The children wandered over now, curious about what their parents were whispering. Marcus knelt down and pulled them close. "Do you know what today taught us?" he asked softly. They shook their heads. "That the truth always matters," Marcus said. "People might misunderstand you. They might judge you without knowing who you are. But the truth always comes out in the end. And no matter what, you must never let anyone make you doubt your worth." His youngest daughter leaned into his chest. "But Daddy, why did they think you stole the boat?" Marcus sighed gently, stroking her hair. "Sometimes people don't look at the facts. They just look at what they want to see. It's not fair, but we can't let their mistake change how we see ourselves. We know the truth. That's what matters." The children listened carefully, their little hearts still processing everything. Leah wrapped her arms around them too, and together, as a family, they stood under the open sky, drawing strength from one another. As the night deepened, Marcus restarted the yacht's engine and began steering back toward the marina. It was time to return, though none of them wanted the day to end. The ride back was quiet, filled with the steady hum of the boat and the occasional laugh from the children as they pointed at distant lights flickering on shore. When they finally reached the dock, the marina was much quieter than before. The crowd that had once gathered was gone, but the echoes of what had happened still seemed to linger in the air. Marcus helped Leah and the children off the yacht, carrying their things with steady hands. He made sure the vessel was tied securely before leading his family back along the pier. Halfway down the dock, a man approached. It was one of the bystanders who had been there earlier, phone in hand, recording the whole incident. He looked hesitant but sincere as he stopped in front of Marcus. "Sir," he said quietly, "I just wanted you to know. I posted the video of what happened today. People need to see it. The way you were treated, it wasn't right. Already, it's spreading. People are talking about it." Marcus paused, unsure how to feel. Part of him wanted to leave the incident behind, but another part knew the man was right. Stories like his couldn't be ignored. They needed to be seen, so change could come. "Thank you," Marcus said simply, his voice calm. "The truth needs to be told." The man nodded, then stepped aside as Marcus and his family continued on. By the time they reached their car, the children were fast asleep in the back seat, their small heads leaning against one another. Leah sighed as she settled into the passenger seat. "What a day," she whispered. Marcus started the car, his hands steady on the wheel. "Yes," he agreed softly. "But we got through it together. That's what matters most." As they drove home, Marcus thought about the lessons the day had carved into his heart. He thought about the importance of dignity, the power of truth, and the resilience of love. He knew his family would remember what had happened, but he also knew they would remember how they had risen above it. Later that night, after tucking the children into bed, Marcus stepped out into the quiet of the backyard. The stars still stretched across the sky, just as they had over the ocean. He closed his eyes and breathed deeply, letting the cool air settle inside him. He whispered to himself, as if speaking to the universe, "I will not let this break me. I will not let it define me. I will stand tall, for my family, for myself, for the truth." Inside the house, Leah called his name softly. He turned and saw her standing at the doorway, her smile gentle but strong. She held out her hand. He walked back to her, taking it in his, and together they stepped inside, ready to face tomorrow with the strength they had proven today. The incident at the marina would not disappear overnight. People would watch the videos, arguments would be made, and opinions would be shared. But Marcus knew that beyond the noise of the world, what mattered most was the unshakable bond of his family. They had endured, they had learned, and they had shown one another that truth and love were stronger than any false judgment. As he lay in bed later, listening to the quiet breaths of his sleeping children down the hall, Marcus allowed himself to finally close his eyes. The weight of the day lifted from his shoulders, replaced with the steady comfort of knowing that he had faced injustice with dignity and had walked away stronger than before. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, as life always did, but he was ready. Because no matter what storm might come, Marcus had learned that his family was his anchor, and the truth was his compass. And with those, he could sail through anything.